6:30 p.m. We'll call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. Let's start by making sure all trustees can hear me. Terry?
Yes, I can hear you.
Celeste?
Yes, I can.
Very good, thank you. Russ?
I can hear you, Randy.
Excellent. Bo?
I can hear you just fine, Randy.
Great. Joanne?
Here and well heard. Thank you.
All right. Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We need to approve our agenda for this meeting. We're removing the food service management contract. Are there any other changes?
No, sir.
Can we have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as amended?
Mr. President, I make the following motion that we approve the agenda as amended, removing the food service contract, item 10.
Second.
Please. Thank you, Kurt. Roll call vote, please, Barb.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Rathburn,
Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Navaria,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Droppers.
Yes.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. We'll move forward with our next agenda item, and I'll turn it over to Mark for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Randy. We have 3 scheduled reports, and then I have a couple of additions when we're done with that, just in summary. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Ron Herron to give the bond project update. Ron?
Yes, good evening, board members. Good to see you tonight. I want to give you a quick bond update first, and then we'll go into the good news is that we're up and constructing again, given the governor's orders, and we hit the ground running. And so I'll try to give you a kind of a status of where we're at on each campus. I'll start with the Northern Auditorium. Again, we have ongoing masonry work going on there, and that'll be ongoing for a while, doing some brick work there as well. We have a roof drainage install, some roofing work in progress. We have the locker room underground infrastructure going in. So those are the activities.
Ron, I think you froze up there. You did freeze up.
On at the Northern Auditorium.
Hey, Ron, you froze up. I think the last thing we heard was the locker room infrastructure. So anything after that wasn't said, wasn't heard.
Okay. Can you hear me now, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. The locker, yeah, on the Northern Auditorium was the locker infrastructure. At West Middle School, we are currently doing Science and Media Center demo. And also we have demoed the front office and are starting to put finishes in there.
Hey, Ron, it just happened again. Ron, we're still not getting anything from you, so not sure. Hey, Ron, try turning off your video and see if that helps at all. If you turn your video, if that helps in getting sound. So Ron, maybe if maybe you need to exit and rejoin, and how about if we move over to come back to you and move over to Dan Rathburn to do a summary of the change orders. Are you ready to do that, Dan? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm probably going to keep you guys here a long time with all of this, but we'll start with BOE report. Absolutely no changes. Moving dollars between projects here for bond change order 28. So no activity there for moving anything into unallocated contingency or between projects. Moving over into the change order report. We have one change order to report right now, kind of part and parcel of the shutdown. Things obviously were slow and there's not much paperwork to catch up on. But that change order is, or CCD is for the Northern Auditorium, and it is to add one fire pull station. This is a result of code review and code officials adding that pull station. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, Dan. And how about Paula? How about we move into the financial report, please?
Sure thing. Good evening, board members. Included in your board packet was financial information through month ending April 30th. Comparison of this school year to last school year at the same time. Overall, revenues are tracking pretty close to last year, slightly above last year would be expected based on the current foundation funding that we're experiencing. Local revenue is down slightly, and we are starting to see the effects of gate receipts for athletic events for that revenue not coming in since the COVID shutdown. Federal revenue is down. We have not requested a drawdown on our federal grants, but we plan to do so. The local payments to other districts, that is currently down for this year compared to last year, and that's due to timing of a special ed payment from KRESA. Last year, we received it in April. This year, we deposited the check the beginning of May, so that revenue line item will show up in next year's report. Moving on to expenditures, if you look overall, we are down slightly in comparison to last year, and that would be a little bit expected based on the fact that not everything is happening as originally planned in the budget due to the shutdown. Want to just draw a couple of items to your attention. The general administration line under supporting services, kind of in the middle of the report, that expense is down because of employees that we did have to furlough through EduStaff due to the shutdown. So we're seeing a change in that line item as compared to last year. Transportation is still tracking below last year, can be expected because we're not using the fuel costs and having the repair costs that we would have had last year. The mechanics do plan to, I've talked to them with the final amendment, and we are going to see some expenditures on that line item because they're going to be working on some buses. The other support area of the budget, that is showing up in spending when compared to last year. And I just want the board to know that that's in comparison to looking at budget to spend, and looking at last year, the athletic directors have requested to spend some of their SOAR money, and that was not reflected in the February amendment. It was requested after the February amendment, so we're showing an uptick in spending on that line item. Our child care services line is trending downward from last year, and that's because we are not paying out those wages that we were paying out and the supply related costs. There was really not a whole lot to report on page 2, looking at salaries to benefits and purchase services overall. I didn't see anything that really stuck out. I mean, yes, we are spending less in supplies currently than what we did last year, but other numbers are tracking pretty closely. As you are aware, we spoke at the prior meeting that the revenue estimating conference was held on last Friday, and revenues are down for the state school aid fund and for the state's general fund. They are working towards coming up with a plan for that, but preliminarily, Senate Fiscal Agency to balance the budget for the 1920 school year has stated that we as a district could potentially receive a $650 to $700 proration cut per. So that currently is not reflected in any of the budget numbers included in your financial report. The state has options of looking for funds, reallocating funds from other budgets, and passing legislation to be able to use more than 25% of their budget stabilization fund. So there'll be a lot of changes coming our way in the area of school finance.
Any
Paula?
questions for Paula?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Paula,
Mm-hmm.
if we're saying a $650 cut per pupil, we're talking about 5,590,000 cut out in our 1920 for how many total, or for how many months?
5.8 million cut out from our 1920 budget, and we don't know if that could potentially happen in 1 month's state aid payment, or if they'll prorate over 2 months. It all depends on when things start happening at the state level, where Department of Treasury notifies the state budget director of the revenue shortfall, and there are legal proceedings. There are things that have to happen at the state level so that it can work through the necessary steps to determine the final outcome to funding.
So one thing I saw out of the conference a week ago, and you've got the right name for it, is if the state of Michigan doesn't get some federal funding, the state can't come up with a foundation allowance for the 2021 school year without some support of federal money. Did you get that sense as well?
Yes, I received that same census as well, that the proration cut that we would experience in the 1920 school year would then also carry forward to the 2021 school year in order to balance out that budget based on revenue targets that they currently have in place. At the revenue estimating conference, they did call for an additional conference that would happen in August or September, but by then they would have to have determined what our proration would be, because our final payment is received on August 20th for our fiscal year.
And then we don't receive a payment in September, is that correct?
No payment in September. That's why we levy property taxes through the city of Portage to carry us over until we receive that first payment in October. The state's fiscal,
And then
October 1 to September 30.
I always have to remember there's a lag, Paula. So now we have the other problem is if our taxpayers delay their payment up in September and October, due in mid-September, we won't have our tax revenue, correct? If the taxpayers have trouble paying their tax fees to the city of Portage in September, that delays our money as well.
Correct. There could be a delay in revenue received.
Any other questions for Paula? All right, I see. Thank you, Paula. Appreciate that. I know it's not a fun time for you as you're trying to close out this year and plan for next year, but thank you for all your good work. And I know you're doing that with one fewer person in your office, with Brenda's departure to another district. So we know that a lot is falling on your shoulders. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I see that Ron has rejoined us. Looks like he's got maybe his technical difficulties over. So Ron, do you mind picking up? I think you were at West Middle School the last time we saw you. And you're gonna have to unmute or we're not gonna hear West Middle School.
Yeah, my apologies. Had a little technical problem with my router, but I'm back, so I'll pick up where I left off. West Middle School. We are, as I stated before, science and media centers are being demoed. The office has been demoed and starting finishes there. Hallways, ceilings completed, and hallways are in the progress of being painted at this time. Also, they're putting some of the finishes on the gym floor there in the auxiliary gym. At Central Middle School, again, that project was totally shut down, but we've been able to sort of really get moving quite quickly. I'll give you some notes after I give you kind of what activities are going on, but classrooms and extended learning areas, the flooring and ceilings and some windows are being done there. The media center, we have flooring and ceilings in progress. We have ongoing mechanical going on in the penthouse and also fixtures throughout the building. We are starting a number of activities on the old Central Middle. We're starting to pack up. We've got teachers coming in and helping us to close out that building at this time. We have some pre-demo activities going on as well. And if you drove by there today, you saw sidewalks being demoed out front and around the building to get that building prepared. So here's the, I'd like to talk about schedule for Central Middle School a bit. Central Middle School, we have a very tight schedule now. We are going to work with OAK, and we're going to be able to get into that building on or before August 28th, which is a good thing. During this process, we've got to sort of manage this whole COVID world that we live in, and hopefully we don't have any incidents of that, which could impact our schedule as we move forward. There are certain guidelines that we have to meet if we had any incident on our site. That being said, there will be a few areas that when we get to the 28th, that will not be complete. We've sort of in the situation where the black box theater would not be ready when we start school, nor would some balancing and commissioning work be all the way done. We'll have, that work would probably go through the 23rd of October. Now the site work, we had, our original schedule had the parking lots and the bus loops being done by October, the end of October. We are still on that schedule. Okay, so we are still on that schedule. So we're going to maintain that schedule. As I stated before, sort of our move activities, moving out of Central Middle, we're sort of staggering those moves based on what areas of the new Central Middle School are completed. So we'll probably be moving some things into the extended learning areas first, and then other areas throughout the building as they're, then the media center, I think, is second, and then some of the weight rooms. And so as those things get completed, we'll be staging the move of items into that building. So we don't have to hit all that move all at once late in the summer. We are scheduled to actually start to demo that building late in June or first part of July. June 1st, they're going to do the abatement, and there are some activities that has to happen before abatement. So we are really taking out technology, maintenance items, doors, equipment that we can use prior to the abatement starting on June 1. So those are the activities going on in construction world. Any questions?
Thanks, Ron.
Okay.
Update on all that. There certainly people are keeping busy, and hopefully they'll stay healthy as well through this.
Yeah, we have quite a few procedures in place to monitor the sites, and OEK has come up with a program to do that, and we'll try to stay on top of it so that we can keep moving.
Great.
I will move on to the financial update. As you can see in your materials, there are no changes from our last bond change order report, financial report. This is change order 28.
Hey,
which
Ron.
there are,
Ron, while you were off, we had
oh,
Dan,
Dan did it.
yeah, Dan took care of that. So
Thank you, Dan.
you're off the hook on that one.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you rejoining us. Just a couple of other things that I wanted to mention, board members. The first, I know you previously approved some summer trips overseas this year, out of country. There was a trip to Italy, one to France, and another one to Ecuador and the Galapagos. And those have all been canceled for this summer and rescheduled for next summer. So I don't intend to bring those approvals back to the board other than just to inform you that those trips have been rescheduled for next year, and staff members are planning accordingly. Also, just wanted to mention that we've this past week we've launched a survey to our parents to assess our continuity of learning plan. We've had over 2,000 parents that have responded to the survey, and it's giving us a lot of great information about how our plan is operating both this spring, and it's also helping inform us to some of the things we're doing with online instruction as we look to next fall and beyond, if we have to implement that plan. As you know, that was an emergency plan that we put together that had a lot of constraints on it from various sources. So, you know, what we can learn from our parents now, we'll try to implement as quickly as possible, but otherwise we'll use the information to help inform our efforts next year. Speaking of next year, we do have a committee that's formed. It's comprised primarily of our central office team and some building level representatives. And we're working on a plan for what the reopening of school might look like. That plan is going to be closely aligned with the 6 different phases that the state has identified, from phase 1, where everything is closed down tightly, to phase 6, where everything is operating more normally as we've known it. Right now, just a reminder, we're in phase 3 as a state and as in our area in particular. And face-to-face instruction does not resume until we get into phase 5. So we don't know where we're going to be when school opens up, whether we're going to be continuing in this online mode, or whether we're going to be in face-to-face or somewhere in between there. So as we develop our plans, we're going to be mindful of the phases that the governor and the state have identified, as well as what we're going to need to have in place to be able to function. So we expect that there'll be more direction coming from the state, from the governor's office, as far as guidance for opening things up. Right now, we're just processing all the information that we're receiving on sometimes on a daily basis to figure out what to do with next fall and beyond. It's also a good opportunity for us to really take a look at some of the constraints and challenges that we've had, and try to do a little more reimagination about what education could look like both next year and throughout the year, as we may have to be fluctuating between these phases if we get another a rebound of some of the cases and restrictions placed on us. So I'm hoping that there'll be some good minds that are informing our work. We're starting out with doing a little visioning exercise later this week, and that will help guide our decisions and our efforts in developing that plan. We're processing a lot of information from folks from around the country, resources that are available to us, and I have confidence that we'll have a plan that works for everyone. We know that parents are, during this time, they'll remember what we're doing, and for some kids, this online environment is working well for them, but for many others, it's not. We know that there are a lot of inequities across the district, so our plan for online instruction for next year is going to have to look different than what it did for this spring, just because it's very limited in what's happening right now. And again, we want Portage to be the best place for parents to send their children to get a high quality education, rather than going someplace else to do that. So we're very mindful of that and working on that. And then I know a lot of questions come up about graduation activities. As you know, we had to cancel graduation activities, or at least postpone them. But our principals have been polling their senior class and their parents and trying to get information from them as to what their expectations are. So right now, our plans are to hold at our central and northern anyway, to hold outdoor graduation ceremonies. The dates that have tentatively been set are August 6th and 7th, with rain dates of August 8th and 9th. And again, depending on what the distancing rules are and what other restrictions are in place, that's the plan moving forward. The details around that haven't been worked out specifically. Community high school, well, let me go back to the other 2 high schools. Their feedback was that they really wanted something that was in a very traditional sort of way. To the extent possible, walking across the stage, getting a diploma were all important things. The speeches and other things that happened were less important to them. So I know the principals are both being respectful to the input that they're getting. At community high school, what's important to those students is that it's more of a family event. And so I know Clint is looking at doing something with individual graduation ceremonies that may extend over a period of time and not be the conventional gathering together of those graduates. So again, the details yet are unknown. The specifics of each of those are unknown, but know that we're planning something meaningful for our seniors that have worked so hard and have been so negatively impacted by this shutdown that we've had to face. There's also the seniors now are in the process of turning their equipment back in, their technology, their books. As I look out my window here at the central campus, there's a line of cars doing that right now. Students are turning in their computers, their textbooks, and getting all their end of the year things in order. Similar thing is happening at Northern on a different schedule. I think they started today earlier in the day, and that'll continue through this week. So there's a lot going on in spite of the fact that we're all working from home as much as possible. And I'm sure we're in for some more interesting weeks and months ahead of us. So that's all I have as part of my report, Randy and board. If there's any questions on anything I've mentioned, feel free to ask.
Excuse me, Mark, it's Rusty here. Regarding online school this fall, I have a concern that, although school may be open and kids would be able to attend, you might get a certain percentage of kids that don't want to attend. There'd be a potential that we could offer online education along with in-school education. So we can capture those kids and they still get the Portage experience. They know the instructors, but maybe they're just, there are some kids who might have some medical issues, some immune issues where they might not be able to attend a traditional classroom.
I'm certainly hoping that we can come up with some options that are online options. There's a huge difference between, a spring setup where students have already established relationships with their teachers and then moving to an online environment. It's a lot different when you're starting out a school year without having any relationships with teachers that you might have. So that certainly is a challenge. I think it's not something that's insurmountable, but these things are going to require us to, decisions about that are going to require us working with with our teachers and with our negotiated contracts. But I'm confident that we can provide some viable options for our parents that don't, even if we can open up school in a normal way, there are going to be some folks that are going to be hesitant to come back into that environment. And we will be looking at those issues as we develop our plans for next year.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we consider that because we want to keep those kids in the system. So maybe even if they don't want to attend next year, we'll have them the following years, but we certainly don't want to lose them. We want to capture them and still make sure they're a part of this district and a part of this community. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for the updates, Mark. We appreciate it. Move to our comments and communications section. As I understand it, we have no comments from citizens tonight. We can go right to comments by board trustees, and I believe Joanne has a comment.
Yes, thank you, Randy. And this kind of dovetails on Mark's report. I had a Michigan Association of School Boards Committee meeting, MASB, approximately the 11th of May, and they forecasted something that Governor Whitmer put into place on May 15th. It's a council, and I would call it a committee, to create school reopening, and it's called Return to School Roadmap. And it's going to be made of 21 to 25 administrators, educators, health experts, community stakeholders. And the ironic thing of this whole situation is funding is in place, support is in place by funding to get the word out, but they are saying it's going to take 100 days to get this roadmap ready to resume school, which puts us right down to probably opening day of school. So it would be after August 15th, and we've got an early start this year. So let me applaud Mark and the admin building, and the administrators to form their committee and start to look like what is good for Portage Public Schools when we open the end of August in 2020. Thanks, Randy, for letting me have the floor.
Thanks, Joanne. Any other comments from trustees?
Randy, this is Bo. Just a quick one. I want to thank everybody for a good retreat today at 4 o'clock. And for those of you on owner's linkage, I'll get an email out tomorrow and we'll look for times for us to meet hopefully soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Bo. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the administration and all our teachers for doing all they can during these not so fun times.
Thanks, Kurt. Any other comments from trustees? Okay, we'll go to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first one is to approve the May 4th, 2020 Committee of the Whole work session. The second is to approve the 2021 school meal prices based on the pricing equity requirements from the Michigan Department of Education. We reviewed these prices at our August 4th, or excuse me, at our May 4th work session. And basically lunch prices at elementary, middle, and high school are going up by a dime. The third item is to approve changes to the superintendent evaluation instrument to reflect 40% of the annual year-end evaluation based on student growth and assessment data. And this is a change that's required by law. And finally, the fourth item is to approve the submission of a $20,000 grant to the Michigan Council for the Arts and Cultural Affairs to support the aesthetic education program between October 1st, 2020 to August 28th, 2021 as presented. And this was an item that was discussed at our May 4th work session as well. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved, and we'll move to our first required action item, which is to approve the KRESA 2020-21 General Education Fund budget. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I'd like to make the following motion, that the Board of Education adopt the resolution provided indicating support of the KRESA General Education Fund budget for the 2021 school year as presented.
Thanks, Joanne. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kurt. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Barb.
Mr. Rathburn,
Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Novaria,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Droppers,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you, Barb. The motion is approved. Our first action item is to set a special meeting regarding the superintendent evaluation. And there is a motion there, and the date I was hoping would work for everybody would be June 22nd, the last day or the last meeting that we have in June at 5 p.m. Is that acceptable to everybody, that date?
Randy, I support that, and I'll make the motion. And if we get a roll call vote to accept that time, then we'll be all set. Is that aligned with your hopes of this action item?
Yeah, that'd be great. Is there anybody who has a problem with that date and time? Okay, let's move forward with a motion, please, Joanne. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, I make the following motion, that the Board of Education set a special meeting for the superintendent evaluation to be held on June 22nd, 2020 at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Randy, this is Bo. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, sir. Roll call vote, please, Barb.
Dr. Shelton Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Novaria,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Droppers,
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
Yes.
and Mr. Rathburn.
Yes.
Thank you, Barb. And motion is approved. The meeting for the superintendent evaluation is set. And finally, is there a motion, please, to set the public hearing regarding the 2021 fiscal plan? And that would also be on June 22nd at 6:30.
Mr. President, I'd like to take all that Open Meetings Act experience through MASB and put it into motion for this last action item. I offer the following the following motion that the Board of Education set a public hearing on the proposed 2020-2021 budget for June 22nd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. and authorize the board secretary to publish the required notice in the Kalamazoo Gazette.
Thank you, Joanne. Is there a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kurt. And if we could take the roll call vote, please, Barb.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Novaria,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Droppers,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Rathburn,
Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris.
Yes.
Thank you, Barb. The public hearing for the budget is set for June 22nd. That takes us to the end of our agenda. Thank you all, and this meeting is adjourned.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.